The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. The Federation has encountered silicon-based life forms, energy beings, and entities that exist outside conventional spacetime. But what happens when 7 humanoids appear whose very cellular structure rewrites the rules of biological evolution? When their existence challenges not just scientific understanding, but the philosophical foundation upon which the United Federation of Planets was built? The USS Enterprise-D was conducting a routine survey of subspace anomalies near the Azure Nebula when sensors detected an impossible energy signature. Not the familiar distortion of a wormhole or the quantum fluctuation of a temporal rift, but something that made Commander Data's positronic brain cycle through 17,000 theoretical models in 0.3 seconds, and reject them all. Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood from his chair, his instincts sharpened by years of commanding Starfleet's flagship. Report. Captain, I am detecting a subspace rupture forming directly ahead. Data's fingers moved across his console with inhuman precision. However, the dimensional variance does not correspond to any known phenomenon. The rupture appears to be pulling matter from an adjacent reality. An adjacent reality? Counselor Deanna Troi leaned forward, her empathic senses already reaching toward the disturbance. Data, are you suggesting? The view screen erupted with light. A tear in space itself opened like a wound, violet energy crackling along its edges. 7 figures tumbled through the breach, humanoid, unconscious, their bodies convulsing as they crossed dimensional boundaries. The rift collapsed as suddenly as it appeared, leaving only the slowly drifting form suspended in the void. Transporter room, emergency beam out, Picard commanded. Get them to sick bay immediately. In the medical bay, Dr. Beverly Crusher ran her tricorder over the first patient and froze. The readings made no sense. Genetically human, but with chromosomal structures that shouldn't exist. Cellular mutation on a scale that should have killed them, yet their vital signs were stabilizing. Beverly to bridge. Captain, you need to see this. When Picard arrived, he found his chief medical officer staring at 7 occupied biobeds, her expression caught between scientific fascination and deep concern. 5 men, 2 women. Their clothing was strange, form-fitting uniforms in blue and yellow, some with distinctive X-shaped insignias. One man's hair was white despite appearing middle-aged. Another had unusual bone structures visible along his knuckles. A woman's hair was a striking white streak against brown. Their genetic structure is unlike anything in our database, Crusher explained, pulling up a holographic display of intertwined DNA helices. Look at this. They're human, or were human, but they've undergone systematic genetic mutation. Not radiation damage or disease. This is coded into their very chromosomes. An active gene I've never encountered. Data tilted his head, studying the readings. Fascinating. The genetic modifications appear to grant them extraordinary abilities. This man, he gestured to a muscular figure with wild dark hair, possesses a regenerative healing factor operating at the cellular level. His skeleton has been laced with an unidentified metal alloy. This woman's physiology allows her to manipulate electromagnetic fields. The probability of such mutations occurring naturally is approximately 1 in 14 billion. Then they're not natural, Lieutenant Worf growled from the doorway, his hand resting on his phaser. They could be weapons. Genetically engineered soldiers. Or refugees, Picard countered quietly. He approached the nearest bed, studying the face of a bald man whose features held an expression of peace despite his unconscious state. The question is, from where? And why here? The bald man's eyes opened. Picard felt it immediately, a presence touching the edges of his consciousness. Not invasive, but unmistakably there. Gentle. Curious. The sensation reminded him of his encounter with the Olyans, but more refined. More controlled. Please. Do not be alarmed. The voice resonated directly in his mind, warm and professorial. My name is Charles Xavier. We mean you no harm. Intruder alert. Worf's phaser was drawn instantly. He's attacking the captain telepathically. Stand down, Mr. Worf. Picard raised his hand, never breaking eye contact with the man on the biobed. He's not attacking. He's communicating. To Xavier, can you speak aloud? Xavier's lips moved, his voice hoarse from disuse. Yes. Forgive the intrusion into your thoughts. Where I come from, telepathy is sometimes necessary to establish peaceful contact. He sat up slowly, his gaze sweeping the room, taking in the advanced medical equipment, the uniforms, the non-human Klingon security officer. This isn't our world, is it? No, Picard replied. You're aboard the USS Enterprise, flagship of the United Federation of Planets. I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard. You and your companions came through what appears to be an interdimensional rupture. Do you remember what happened? Xavier closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. We were in the danger room, a training facility. There was an energy surge. Reality itself seemed to tear open. Then nothing. His eyes snapped open with sudden urgency. My students. Are they all alive and stable? Crusher assured him. Though your genetic structures are causing my equipment some difficulty. I've never seen mutation like this. In my universe, genetic variation follows predictable evolutionary patterns. What you have is revolutionary. Xavier smiled sadly. Or frightening. We've heard both words used many times, Doctor. We're mutants. Homo superior. The next step in human evolution, whether humanity is ready for us or not. Other figures began to stir. A young woman with brown and white streaked hair gasped awake, her hands reaching out, and Dr. Crusher's medical tricorder flew from her grip, clattering against the wall. Rogue. Xavier's voice carried command. Control yourself. We're among friends. Friends? A man with a red visor over his eyes sat up, his hand moving to the device reflexively. Professor, where are we? This isn't the mansion. We've been transported to another reality, Scott. Xavier's mental voice must have been filling in details telepathically, because the man called Scott's posture shifted from defensive to analytical in seconds. The white-haired woman rose with fluid grace, her eyes solid white before returning to normal brown. I can feel the air circulation systems. The atmospheric composition is different. Richer oxygen content. She turned to Picard. You are the leader here. Captain of this vessel, yes. And you are? Aurora Monroe. Some call me Storm. She glanced at Xavier. Charles, I sense no immediate threat from these people. But there are others on this ship who fear us. Their emotions are loud. Troy stepped forward. You're an empath. Of a kind. I sense the living world, air, water, the electromagnetic fields that bind all things. And I can feel fear spreading through this ship. Storm's gaze was direct, challenging. We've faced fear before, Captain Picard. The question is, will you give in to it, or will you help us find our way home? Before Picard could respond, the blue-furred figure on the end biobed sat up with feline grace, adjusting wire-rimmed glasses. My. Based on the technological sophistication of this medical bay and the apparent artificial gravity system, I'd estimate we've traveled either several centuries into our future or, more likely given the dimensional variance I detected during our transit, to an entirely different universe. Fascinating. Simply fascinating. He extended a large, clawed hand. Dr. Henry McCoy. Biochemist, polymath, and apparently an interdimensional traveler. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. Data shook the offered hand. Dr. McCoy. I am Lieutenant Commander Data. I am an android. Your hypothesis regarding dimensional displacement appears correct based on my analysis of the subspace rupture. An android? Beast's eyes lit up. a fully sentient artificial being. Oh, this universe is going to be quite interesting indeed. The man with the wild hair and metal-laced skeleton swung his legs off the biobed, his movements predatory. 3 metal claws extended from between his knuckles with a distinctive snicked sound. Interesting ain't the word I'd use, bub. We got yanked from our home, dumped in some sci-fi future, and surrounded by people who smell nervous. Real nervous. Wolverine, Xavier said sharply. Retract your claws. These people saved our lives. Maybe. The claws retracted, but Wolverine's posture remained tense. Or maybe they just want to study us like lab rats. Seen that movie before, Chuck? Picard studied the group, 7 individuals whose very existence challenged everything he understood about human evolution, now stranded in a universe that operated by different rules. He thought of the Prime Directive, of the Federation's commitment to diversity and peaceful coexistence. Yet he also thought of the powerful abilities he'd just witnessed in mere seconds of consciousness. Telepathy. Telekinesis. Metal claws embedded in living bone. Empathic connection to electromagnetic fields. Dr. Crusher, continue monitoring their condition, Picard decided. Mr. Data, I want a full analysis of the subspace rupture. If we're to send our guests home, we need to understand how they arrived. Professor Xavier, if you and your people are feeling well enough, I'd like to speak with you in the observation lounge. We have much to discuss. Xavier nodded slowly. Of course, Captain. Though I should warn you, wherever mutants go, complications tend to follow. We are, by our very nature, agents of change. And change, as you'll discover, is not always welcome. On the bridge, a subtle alarm chimed at the tactical station. Worf's eyes narrowed as he studied his console. A cloaked ship had just entered sensor range, holding position exactly 50,000 kilometers from the Enterprise. Watching. Waiting. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The observation lounge felt smaller with 7 additional people occupying it. Professor Xavier sat at the head of the conference table opposite Picard, his wheelchair, synthesized by the replicator to his exact specifications, positioned with quiet dignity. The other X-Men flanked him, Cyclops and Jean Grey to his right, Storm and Beast to his left. Wolverine leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, while Rogue stood near the viewport, staring at the stars with barely concealed wonder. Commander Riker, Data, Worf, and Troy completed the Federation contingent. The atmosphere was cordial but charged with unspoken questions. Let me begin by saying that the United Federation of Planets is committed to helping you return to your reality, Picard said, his hands folded on the table. However, I must be frank. Interdimensional travel is theoretically possible but extraordinarily rare. We've encountered perhaps a dozen confirmed cases in Starfleet's history. Most required unique circumstances or technology far beyond our current capabilities. Then we may be here for some time, Xavier observed. His mental voice had been silent since sickbay, respecting boundaries without being asked, a courtesy Picard appreciated. Captain, perhaps you could help us understand where here is. What is the United Federation of Planets? Data activated the view screen, displaying a slowly rotating map of Federation space. The United Federation of Planets is an interstellar republic composed of over 150 member worlds spanning 8,000 light-years. It was founded in 2161 by Earth, Vulcan, Andoria, and Tellar. Our mission is peaceful exploration, scientific discovery, and diplomatic cooperation among diverse species. Beast leaned forward, his eyes bright with intellectual hunger. Over 150 worlds. And you said diverse species, implying non-human intelligence is commonplace? Quite commonplace, Data replied. I myself am an artificial life form. Lieutenant Worf is Klingon, a warrior species from the Klingon Empire. Counselor Troy is half Betazoid, a telepathic species. The Federation includes humanoids, silicon-based lifeforms, energy beings, and species we are still learning to categorize. A universe where diversity isn't just tolerated but celebrated, Jean Grey said softly, her red hair catching the starlight from the viewport. Where different species work together as equals. She glanced at Xavier. It sounds like everything we've been fighting for. On the surface, yes, Xavier agreed. His gaze met Picard's, and the captain sensed the professor was measuring something deeper than words. But I wonder, Captain. In our world, humanity fears mutants because we represent change. Evolution beyond human norms. How does your Federation respond to beings whose very existence challenges the established order? Picard felt the weight of the question. The Federation was built on the principle of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We believe that the vast array of life in the universe creates a tapestry richer than any single thread. But, he paused, choosing his words carefully. That belief is constantly tested. We have laws, directives meant to protect developing civilizations from interference. We have member species who still struggle with accepting others. We are, in many ways, still learning what we claim to champion. The Prime Directive, Cyclops said, his hand resting on his visor. Jean picked it up from the doctor's thoughts. A non-interference policy with pre-warp civilizations. Sounds noble until you're watching an entire planet suffer and you have the power to help. Worf's jaw tightened. The Prime Directive exists to prevent advanced civilizations from imposing their will on others, no matter how well-intentioned. It is the foundation of Federation ethics. And yet, Storm interjected, her voice carrying the weight of storms themselves, ethics without compassion become mere rules. I have seen drought destroy villages while those with power to help stood by, bound by customs and laws. Sometimes, Lieutenant, the right thing and the legal thing are not the same. Perhaps that's a philosophical debate for another time, Riker suggested diplomatically, though his expression showed he found the exchange fascinating. Right now, we need to focus on practical matters. Professor, you mentioned your people are mutants. Could you explain what that means in your reality? Xavier nodded to Beast, who stood with professorial enthusiasm. In our universe, human evolution took an unexpected turn in the mid-20th century. A mutation in the human genome, we call it the X gene, began expressing itself in individuals worldwide. This gene grants extraordinary abilities, telepathy, telekinesis, control over elements, enhanced physical capabilities, and hundreds of other variations. We are Homo superior, the next step in human evolution. But evolution doesn't work that rapidly, Crusher objected from the doorway, having just entered with a PADD full of medical data. Genetic mutations require generations, natural selection, environmental pressures. What you're describing would take millions of years. Under normal circumstances, yes, Beast agreed. Our leading theory involves external factors, radiation from early atomic testing, cosmic ray exposure, or even deliberate manipulation by ancient entities. The truth is, we don't fully understand our own origins. What we do know is that we exist, and humanity has responded with fear, legislation, and violence. Sentinels, Wolverine growled from his position against the wall. Giant robots designed to hunt and kill mutants. Mutant registration acts forcing us to reveal ourselves to a government that wants us controlled or eliminated. We've been fighting for our right to exist since the day we discovered what we were. Rogue turned from the viewport, her southern accent thick with emotion. Can't touch another living person without absorbing their memories, their life force, sometimes their powers. One touch and nearly killed the first boy ever kissed. In our world, that makes me a monster. A threat. Her eyes glistened. Is it different here? In your Federation? Troy's empathic senses were overwhelmed by the pain radiating from the young woman. The Federation has encountered many beings with abilities that could harm others. We approach each situation with compassion and seek solutions that protect both the individual and society. You're not a monster, Rogue. You're a person dealing with an extraordinary challenge. A challenge that our universe's medical technology might address, Crusher added gently. I'd like to run more tests, if you're willing. Not to change you, but to understand. Perhaps we can help you gain control. Before Rogue could respond, Worf's combadge chirped. Bridge to Lieutenant Worf. Sensors have detected a cloaked vessel maintaining position off our starboard bow. Romulan configuration. Picard was on his feet immediately. Red alert. All guests remain here. Mr. Worf, with me. Captain, Xavier said quietly, his mental voice touching Picard's mind with urgent gentleness. I sense minds aboard that cloaked vessel. Many minds. Many minds. They're not merely observing, they're planning something. An extraction, perhaps. Or an assassination. Picard stopped at the door. How many? 12. Highly trained. Their thoughts are disciplined, shielded. Military operatives. And Captain, they're terrified of us. That terror makes them dangerous. Captain, what's going on? Cyclops stood, his hand moving to his visor. If there's a threat, we can help. You're civilians on my ship, Picard said firmly. And until we understand the full situation, I need you to remain here where it's safe. Commander Riker will stay with you. Data, Worf, with me. As they exited, Jean Grey's voice followed them, tinged with psychic resonance. Captain Picard. We've spent our lives being hunted because people fear what we can do. We know that look in your eyes, you're wondering if we're worth the risk. If protecting us might endanger your crew. Her green eyes blazed with conviction. We are worth it. And we'll prove it to you. On the bridge, the view screen showed empty space, but Picard knew better. The Romulans were out there, cloaked and calculating. Hail them, he ordered. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation starship Enterprise. You are in violation of the Neutral Zone Treaty. Decloak and state your intentions. Silence. Then, a woman's voice, smooth as silk and cold as space itself. Captain Picard. We have no quarrel with the Federation today. We are merely interested in your recent guests. 7 humanoids with unprecedented genetic capabilities. The Romulan Star Empire would very much like to meet them. The individuals aboard this ship are under Federation protection. Protection? Or study? The Romulan commander's tone sharpened. We monitored their arrival. We've analyzed the energy signatures. They are weapons, Captain. Living weapons from another reality. And you're keeping them on your flagship, surrounded by your best officers and most advanced technology. Who, exactly, are you protecting them from? Or are you protecting them for yourself? Picard felt the accusation like a blade. Because wasn't there truth in it? Hadn't his first instinct been to study them, understand them, categorize them? Hadn't Worf's hand gone to his phaser before Xavier had even spoken? In the observation lounge, Professor Xavier sat perfectly still, his mind ranging outward through the ship, sensing the complex web of emotions, fears, and hopes that surrounded his team. He'd built the X-Men to be heroes, to prove that mutants could be trusted. But in this universe, they were the aliens. The unknowns. The potentially dangerous variables that disrupted the careful order of a civilization built on logic and law. Professor. Storm placed her hand on his shoulder. What do we do? Xavier opened his eyes, and they held the weight of 1,000 difficult decisions. What we've always done, Ororo. We prove that we're more than what people fear. We prove that we're worth believing in. Wolverine's enhanced hearing caught the conversation on the bridge, even through the walls. They're gonna hand us over, he said flatly. Always happens. Doesn't matter how noble they talk, when it comes down to it, we're the problem they need to solve. No, Jean said with quiet certainty. Her telepathy brushed the minds throughout the ship, feeling the genuine concern from Picard, the warrior's honor from Worf, the curiosity from Data, the empathy from Troy. They're different. This place is different. I can feel it. Then we better hope you're right, Genie, Wolverine replied, his claws sliding out an inch. 'Cause I got a feeling things are about to get real complicated. On the bridge, the Romulan ship decloaked, not one vessel, but 3 warbirds, their green hulls gleaming in the starlight, weapons powered and targeting the Enterprise. Captain, Worf reported grimly. They're charging disruptors. Picard stood motionless, every eye on him. The Federation's ideals, the X-Men's lives, his crew's safety, all balanced on the knife's edge of his next decision. Mr. Worf, he said calmly. Raise shields. And open a channel to all 3 ships. It's time we had a proper conversation about what the Federation truly stands for. In the observation lounge, Xavier smiled faintly. Perhaps this universe was different after all. The 3 Romulan warbirds held position in perfect formation, their disruptor banks glowing with lethal intent. On the Enterprise bridge, tension wound tight as a coiled spring. Channel open, Captain, Worf announced. Picard stepped forward, his posture relaxed but his voice carrying absolute authority. Commander, I'll address your concerns directly. Yes, 7 individuals from another reality are aboard my ship. Yes, they possess abilities that challenge our understanding of genetics and physics. And yes, they are under Federation protection, not as weapons to be studied or assets to be exploited, but as sentient beings deserving of dignity and aid. The view screen flickered, revealing a Romulan woman whose severe features and calculating eyes marked her as Tal Shiar. Commander Celera. Her reputation preceded her, ruthless, brilliant, and utterly loyal to the Empire's interests. How refreshingly naive, Captain. You offer protection to beings whose very cells could revolutionize military science. Telepaths who could infiltrate the highest levels of command. Warriors who regenerate from lethal wounds. Weather manipulators who could devastate planetary defenses. Her smile was predatory. The Federation preaches peace while sitting on the greatest weapons cache since the Genesis device. They're not weapons, Picard countered. They're people. Refugees displaced through no fault of their own. People. Celera leaned forward. Captain, I have intelligence reports from our operatives monitoring your ship. One of those people possesses telepathic range exceeding any Betazoid or Vulcan on record. Another absorbed your doctor's medical knowledge through simple physical contact. A third could generate an electromagnetic pulse that would cripple every system on this ship. And you call them refugees? In the observation lounge, the X-Men listened through the comm system. Riker had agreed to keep the channel open, transparency seemed wiser than secrecy. She's not wrong, Cyclops said quietly. About what we can do. We are dangerous, in the wrong hands or the wrong circumstances. We're also the people who've saved our world dozens of times, Jean replied, her voice steady. Who've chosen restraint over power, protection over domination. Our abilities don't define us, our choices do. Beast paced, his analytical mind working through scenarios. The fundamental question isn't whether we're dangerous. Any sufficiently advanced being is dangerous. The question is whether this Federation will judge us by our potential for harm or our demonstrated commitment to using our gifts responsibly. Xavier's telepathy was already reaching out, not to invade or control, but to understand. He touched the minds aboard the Romulan vessels, soldiers following orders, officers calculating advantages, and beneath it all, fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of obsolescence, fear that these mutants represented evolutionary competition. Captain Picard, Xavier's mental voice was private, respectful. Commander Celera has operatives aboard your ship. 2 disguised as junior engineers. They're planning to extract us during the confrontation. She's stalling while they move into position. Picard's expression didn't change, but he tapped his comm badge once, a prearranged signal. Commander Celera, you speak of weapons and military applications. That perspective reveals more about the Romulan Empire than about my guests. The Federation will not hand over refugees for you to dissect in the name of national security. Then you choose war over wisdom. Celera's eyes hardened. My ships will fire on the Enterprise unless you comply. Even your shields won't withstand 3 warbuds indefinitely. Surely 7 strangers aren't worth the lives of your crew. Every sentient being is worth protecting, Picard said simply. That's not naivety, Commander. It's principle. And principles that bend under pressure aren't principles at all. The comm crackled. Bridge, this is security. We've apprehended 2 Romulan operatives attempting to access the observation lounge. They're in custody. Celera's composure cracked, just slightly. She'd underestimated the Enterprise's internal sensors, and she'd underestimated the bald human whose mind was currently touching hers with gentle insistence. You don't want this fight, Commander, Xavier projected directly to her. Not because you'll lose, but because you know the Empire's interest in us will only breed more conflict. More fear. More weapons. Is that truly what you want for your people? An arms race built on living beings? Celera flinched, her mental shield slamming into place. Stay out of my mind, mutant. But the damage was done. In that instant of contact, Xavier had sensed something else, orders from the Tal Shir that went beyond simple extraction. If capture proved impossible, the operatives were authorized to eliminate the X-Men. Better dead than in Federation hands. On the Enterprise, alarms suddenly blazed. Captain. Data's fingers flew across his console. I am detecting energy buildups in engineering and on decks 12 and 15. The Romulan operatives were carrying biomimetic charges set to detonate. Explosive yields? Picard demanded. Sufficient to destroy those sections and create hull breaches. They were positioned near the observation lounge. Evacuation protocols. Already handled, Captain. The voice came from the observation lounge. Storm stood at the doorway, her eyes blazing white with power. Jean sensed the danger. We've neutralized the devices. On the view screen, Celera watched as her carefully laid plan disintegrated. The charges that should have eliminated the mutants or forced the Enterprise to surrender them had been discovered and disabled before they could detonate. The telepaths had outmaneuvered her operatives, and now the Empire's aggressive intent was laid bare. You plan to murder refugees, Picard said, his voice carrying controlled fury. Not capture them, murder them. On my ship. Risking my crew. And you dare speak of Federation naivety? Celera's mask slipped back into place. The Empire protects its interests, Captain. As does your Federation, when convenient. Don't pretend otherwise. Lower your shields, Commander, Picard ordered. Stand down your weapons and prepare to receive diplomatic overtures. Or we can discuss this matter at a full session of the Federation Council, where your attempted assassination of refugees will be thoroughly documented. For a long moment, the bridge held its breath. 3 warbuds against 1 Galaxy-class starship, the Enterprise would fight well, but the outcome was uncertain. Everything depended on whether Celera's orders allowed for open warfare or merely covert action. The Romulan commander's smile was thin and bitter. You've made a powerful enemy today, Picard. The Empire will remember how you harbor weapons you don't understand. When these mutants inevitably betray you, and they will, as all living weapons do, think of this moment. The warbuds cloaked and were gone, their warp signatures racing back toward the neutral zone. Picard exhaled slowly. Stand down from red alert. Mr. Worf, maintain heightened vigilance. I want to know if so much as a molecule crosses into our space. He turned to Storm, who stood in the doorway between bridge and observation lounge. You said you neutralized the charges. How? Jean's telekinesis removed the detonators, Storm explained. I used electromagnetic pulses to scramble the triggering mechanisms. The devices are inert. Her expression held quiet pride. We've had extensive experience with bombs, Captain. Mutant hunting organizations tend to favor them. Picard entered the observation lounge, where the X-Men stood in a defensive semicircle, their abilities at the ready even though the immediate threat had passed. Rogue's hands glowed faintly with absorbed energy. Cyclops' hand rested on his visor. Beast's posture was coiled tension despite his gentle smile. Wolverine's claws were fully extended. "Stand down," Xavier said softly. "The captain isn't our enemy. He let those ships threaten us," Wolverine growled. "He didn't fire first, didn't use those fancy weapons to blast them out of the sky. Because that's not how the Federation operates," Jean said, her telepathy confirming what she'd sensed in Picard's mind. "He negotiated. He protected us without firing a shot. That takes more courage than attacking." Picard studied the group, 7 individuals who'd just proven themselves capable of detecting, analyzing, and neutralizing a sophisticated assassination attempt in minutes. They'd shown restraint when they could have lashed out. Coordination when panic would have been justified. And they'd done it all while effectively being prisoners on an alien vessel in an unknown universe. "Professor Xavier," Picard said formally. "I owe you and your team a debt of gratitude. Your abilities prevented a catastrophe. Your restraint avoided an interstellar incident. But I must ask, your telepathy. How far does it extend? What limitations govern your power?" Xavier met his gaze evenly. "In my universe, my range is planetary under optimal conditions. Here, the dimensional variance limits me to approximately 10 kilometers, and even then, the effort is considerable. As for limitations..." He gestured to his wheelchair. "I cannot walk, Captain. I cannot regenerate from injury like Logan. I cannot fly like Aurora or move objects like Jean. What I can do is understand minds, their hopes, fears, and intentions. I use that understanding to build bridges, not to control or manipulate. And yet you entered Commander Solara's mind without permission." "I did." Xavier's voice held no apology, only honest explanation. "Because I sensed murderous intent and needed to confirm it to save lives. Had she been bluffing or merely posturing, I would have withdrawn. But she wasn't. Her operatives were seconds from detonating charges that would have killed dozens of your crew. I made a choice, Captain. The same choice you made when you refused to surrender us. I prioritized lives over protocols." Picard was silent for a long moment. "The Federation has strict laws regarding telepathic intrusion. Betazoids are trained from childhood in ethics and consent. Your abilities, Professor, far exceed theirs. And your team's collective power," he gestured to the group. "You could take this ship if you wished. You could read classified information from my officers' minds. You could manipulate weather systems, telekinetically disable our weapons, heal from any injury we might inflict, absorb our knowledge and abilities through touch. You are, as Commander Solara said, extraordinarily dangerous." "Yes," Xavier agreed simply. "We are. Just as your photon torpedoes are dangerous. Your warp drive. Your ability to transport matter across vast distances or replicate almost any substance. Every advancement in capability brings potential for harm. The question isn't whether we're dangerous, Captain. It's whether you'll judge us by what we could do, or by what we choose to do." Riker stepped forward. "Captain, if I may. In the past hour, our guests detected a cloaked threat, identified infiltrators, disarmed explosives, and prevented a diplomatic nightmare. They did all of this while under intense scrutiny and suspicion from us. I'd say their choices speak for themselves." "Agreed, Number 1. Picard's expression softened slightly. "But we must also acknowledge the reality. Your presence here, Professor, has already attracted hostile attention. The Romulans won't be the last. If your abilities became known to the Borg, the Dominion, or other powers in this galaxy, the consequences could be catastrophic. Then we need to get home, Cyclops said. As quickly as possible. We don't want to disrupt your universe, Captain. We have our own world to protect, our own battles to fight. Data interjected from his position at the science station. Captain, I have completed preliminary analysis of the subspace rupture that brought our guests here. The dimensional membrane between realities has destabilized in this region. The phenomenon is naturally occurring but extremely rare, a confluence of subspace distortions and quantum flux. However, recreating the exact conditions to reverse the effect will require significant research and resources. How long? Jean asked, her voice tight with barely suppressed worry. Unknown. Days, possibly weeks. The mathematics involved are beyond current Federation science. Beast's ears perked up. Perhaps not beyond the science of two universes working together. Commander Data, I'd very much like to collaborate on this problem. I specialize in interdimensional theory and quantum mechanics. Your expertise would be invaluable, Dr. McCoy. Xavier felt the shift in the room's emotional climate, suspicion slowly giving way to cautious cooperation. But he also sensed something else, a presence on the ship he hadn't noticed before. A mind unlike any he'd encountered, artificial yet aware, logical yet curious. Commander Data, Xavier said slowly. You're an android. A fully sentient artificial being. But you're not simply programmed, you're genuinely conscious, aren't you? Data tilted his head. That question has been debated extensively in Starfleet and civilian courts. Legally, I am recognized as a sentient being with full rights under Federation law. Philosophically, I am still exploring what consciousness means. Fascinating, Xavier breathed. In our universe, we fight for mutant rights, for recognition that genetic difference doesn't diminish personhood. You represent a parallel struggle. The recognition that consciousness can emerge in unexpected forms. Indeed, Professor. Perhaps we have more in common than initial appearances suggest. Picard made his decision. We'll help you return home. But until we do, you'll need accommodations aboard the Enterprise. I'm granting you limited guest privileges, access to certain areas, replicator use, recreational facilities. However, I must insist on some restrictions. No unsupervised access to sensitive areas. No telepathic scanning of crew without express consent. And your more destructive abilities must remain dormant except in emergencies. That's fair, Xavier agreed. We'll respect your authority, Captain. We're not conquerors or infiltrators. We're simply people trying to find our way home. Then let's work together toward that goal. Picard extended his hand, and Xavier shook it firmly. Welcome aboard the Enterprise, Professor. I hope your stay is brief and uneventful. Wolverine snorted. Yeah, 'cause our lives are always uneventful. As the group dispersed to their assigned quarters, Jean lingered near the viewscreen, staring at the alien stars. Troy approached quietly. You're worried, the counselor observed. Terrified, Jean admitted. The Romulans were just the first. How many other factions in this galaxy will see us as threats or tools? How many times will we have to prove ourselves before someone decides we're too dangerous to let live? Troy placed a gentle hand on Jean's shoulder. The Federation isn't perfect. We have our prejudices, our fears, our moments of failure. But we also have something your world may lack, centuries of experience learning to coexist with the genuinely alien. You're not the strangest beings we've encountered, Jean. And you won't be the last. But unlike many, you've shown you have hearts as well as power. That matters. Jean managed a small smile. I hope you're right, counselor. Because where we come from, hope is sometimes all we have. In his ready room, Picard activated a secure channel to Starfleet Command. Admiral Nechayev's stern face appeared on the screen. Admiral. I'm transmitting a full report on today's incident. 7 humanoids from a parallel dimension, with abilities that defy conventional understanding. The Romulans have already attempted extraction and assassination. I believe other powers will soon take similar interest. Nechayev's expression was unreadable. Your recommendation, Captain? That we help them return home as quickly as possible. And until then, that we treat them as we would any refugees, with dignity, caution, and the full protection of Federation law. And if they prove to be more than we can handle? Picard thought of Xavier's gentle telepathy, Storm's controlled power, Jean's careful restraint. Then we'll have failed them, Admiral. Not the other way around. After Nechayev signed off, Picard stared at the stars beyond his window. The Federation prided itself on celebrating diversity. But how diverse was too diverse? How much power was too much to integrate into a society built on balance and law? He didn't have answers. Only the certainty that turning away from these refugees would betray everything the Federation claimed to stand for. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other eyes watched the Enterprise. Other minds calculated the possibilities. The X-Men's arrival had sent ripples through subspace, and those ripples were being felt across the galaxy. The mutant question had come to the final frontier. And the universe would never be quite the same. The Enterprise's recreation deck had become an unlikely gathering place. Data had suggested it as neutral ground where the X-Men could acclimate to their temporary home without the clinical atmosphere of sickbay or the formality of briefing rooms. Now, 3 days after their arrival, the space buzzed with tentative curiosity. Beast hung from the climbing apparatus designed for zero-G training, his prehensile feet gripping the bars as he discussed quantum mechanics with Lieutenant Barclay. Storm stood near the viewport, her fingers trailing across the transparent aluminum as she watched stellar phenomena with quiet wonder. Rogue sat across from Guinan at the bar, the Elorian bartender listening with infinite patience as the young woman described the isolation of her untouchable existence. Wolverine prowled the perimeter, his enhanced senses cataloging every crew member, every exit, every potential threat. Old habits died hard. You can relax, Logan, Cyclops said from his position near the door. We're not under attack. Yet, Wolverine growled. Give it time, Slim. Place like this, all these people acting friendly. Something's gonna go wrong. Always does. Jean Grey sat with Counselor Troy at a small table, their conversation flowing between spoken words and something deeper. Two telepaths finding common ground in a universe where mental gifts were rare and often feared. In the Federation, Betazoid telepathy is accepted because it's biological, documented, understood, Troy explained. But even we face prejudice. Some species refuse diplomatic contact with Betazoids. They call us mind readers, invaders of privacy. And our abilities are limited compared to yours, Jean. I sense emotions, surface thoughts when they're strong. You could rewrite someone's entire personality if you chose to. But I don't choose to, Jean said firmly. The professor taught us that power without restraint is just another form of tyranny. I've seen telepaths who abuse their gifts, the Shadow King, Emma Frost before she reformed, others. I know what I could become if I stopped caring about consent and boundaries. Her green eyes held shadows. Sometimes I feel the phoenix stirring inside me, this cosmic force that wants to burn away all limitations. Resisting it takes everything I have. Troy's empathic senses caught the genuine fear beneath Jean's words. You're afraid of your own potential. Terrified. And the worst part? Part of me wants it. Wants to stop holding back, stop limiting myself to protect people who fear me anyway. The Phoenix promises freedom from doubt, from weakness, from all these complicated ethics that make using my power so exhausting. Jean's hands trembled slightly. In this universe, everything runs on logic and science. Maybe that's better than the chaos of ours. Maybe restraint is easier when the world makes sense. Before Troy could respond, alarms shrieked through the recreation deck. Red alert bathed everything in crimson urgency. All senior officers to the bridge, Picard's voice commanded. Mr. Summers, Professor Xavier, your presence is requested as well. On the bridge, the view screen showed something that shouldn't exist. A vessel hung in space ahead of them, its design simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. Sleek Federation lines corrupted by aggressive weaponry. The hull bore Starfleet insignia, but wrong somehow, darker, edged with menace. "Captain, that's an Intrepid-class starship," Riker said, his voice tight with confusion. "But Starfleet hasn't commissioned any vessels in this sector. And those weapon configurations are not standard Starfleet armaments," Worf confirmed, his scowl deepening. "Disruptor banks, photonic missiles, enhanced shields. That ship has been modified for combat far beyond normal Starfleet protocols." Data's fingers danced across his console. "Captain, I am detecting chronoton particles in the surrounding space. Temporal displacement residue. That vessel appears to have traveled through time." Xavier had accompanied Cyclops to the bridge, his wheelchair positioned near the captain's chair. His telepathy reached toward the mysterious ship and recoiled instantly. "Captain, the minds aboard that vessel, they're human, but their thoughts are disciplined in ways I've never encountered." Military precision merged with fanatical devotion. "And they know we're here. They came specifically for us." The comm crackled. "Enterprise, this is Captain Christopher Pike of the USS section. Stand down your shields and prepare to transfer 7 humanoid refugees into our custody. This is not a request." Picard's eyes narrowed. "Section. There's no Federation vessel by that designation. Because we don't officially exist, Captain Picard." The view screen shifted, revealing a man in a modified Starfleet uniform, black where regulation demanded color, sharp where the Federation preferred gentleness. Section 31. "We operate in the shadows to protect the Federation from threats too dangerous for public knowledge. The mutants aboard your ship represent such a threat." Section 31, Picard said the name like a curse. "I've heard rumors. Black operations, unsanctioned missions, violations of every principle the Federation claims to uphold. You have no authority here. We have the authority of necessity, Captain." Pike's smile held no warmth. "Your guests possess abilities that could destabilize the entire Alpha Quadrant. Telepathy exceeding any known species. Regeneration that defeats mortality. Weather control that could devastate planets. The Federation Council doesn't have the stomach to make hard choices about such threats. We do." Cyclops stepped forward, his hand moving to his visor. "We're not threats. We've done nothing except defend ourselves against assassination attempts." "Not yet," Pike agreed. "But your very existence is a mimetic hazard. Knowledge that genetic mutation can grant such power will spread. Other species will seek to replicate your abilities. Weapons research will accelerate. Wars will be fought over the question of forced evolution versus natural development. You're not the danger, Mr. Summers, you're the catalyst for it." Xavier's mental voice touched everyone on the Enterprise bridge simultaneously, crew, officers, and his own team. He believes every word he's saying. To him, we're a statistical inevitability of harm. He'll kill us without hesitation or guilt because he's convinced it's for the greater good. "Captain Pike," Picard said carefully, "the Federation does not execute refugees because of what they might cause. We judge beings by their actions, not fearful speculation about the future. Which is why the Federation needs Section 31. Someone has to make the calculations the Council refuses to acknowledge." Pike leaned forward. "Transfer the mutants now, or we'll take them by force. Your shields won't withstand our weapons. We've had decades to prepare for confrontations with Galaxy-class starships. This ends in one of 2 ways. You surrender 7 individuals to save your crew, or everyone aboard the Enterprise dies for nothing." In engineering, Geordi LaForge stared at his diagnostic displays in disbelief. "Captain, that ship just dropped out of temporal phase. It's now occupying the same spatial coordinates as us, it's literally inside our shields. They've materialized boarding teams on decks 5, 8, and 12. Intruder alert. Worf roared. Security teams to all decks. Seal all access to. The turbolift doors exploded inward. 3 figures in black armor materialized on the bridge, weapons raised. Not phasers, something more brutal. Projectile weapons that hissed with compressed air, firing tranquilizer darts loaded with enough sedative to drop a Vulcan. Cyclops moved faster than anyone expected. His hand slapped his visor control. The optic blast that erupted from his eyes was pure concussive force, ruby-red energy that sent 2 armored figures flying backward into the bulkhead with bone-crushing impact. The third spun toward him, weapon tracking. And froze in midair, suspended by invisible telekinetic force. Jean Grey stepped from the turbolift behind Xavier's wheelchair, her eyes blazing with psionic fire. I sensed your hostile intent 3 seconds before you materialized. Did you really think surprise would work against telepaths? Throughout the ship, Section 31 operatives discovered their carefully planned assault unraveling. On Deck 5, storms summoned localized electrical fields that short-circuited weapons and armor systems. On Deck 8, Beast's enhanced agility and strength made him a whirlwind of controlled violence, disarming attackers without killing them. On Deck 12, Wolverine's claws carved through body armor like tissue paper, leaving a trail of incapacitated but living operatives in his wake. And in the recreation deck, Rogue stood over 3 unconscious Section 31 agents, her hands glowing with absorbed energy and stolen abilities. "Ah, told y'all I was dangerous," she said to the shocked crew members watching. The difference is, choose when and how. On the bridge, Captain Pike's expression shifted from confidence to calculation. Impressive. You're even more capable than our projections indicated. Which proves our point, you're too dangerous to exist in this timeline. Timeline? Data's positronic brain processed the implications instantly. You're not from our present. You've traveled from the future to eliminate them before they can alter history. From a future where the mutant question tears the Federation apart, Pike confirmed. Where genetic enhancement becomes the defining political issue of the 24th century. Where worlds secede from the Federation over the right to create super soldiers based on mutant DNA. Where the Borg adapt mutant abilities and become unstoppable. We've seen it, Captain Picard. We've lived through the collapse. And we came back to prevent it. Xavier's telepathy pierced through Pike's mental shields with surgical precision. What he found made his blood run cold, memories of a devastated Federation, civil war between enhanced and baseline humans, entire planets sterilized in conflicts over genetic superiority. And beneath it all, a terrible certainty, that the X-Men's arrival was the pivot point, the moment when everything went wrong. "You're not lying," Xavier said softly. "You genuinely witnessed that future. But Captain Pike, futures aren't fixed. The choices we make now create the world that follows. If you execute us out of fear, you guarantee the very paranoia and violence you're trying to prevent. We've calculated the variables, Professor. In every timeline where you survive, chaos follows. The mathematics are irrefutable." "Mathematics can't account for free will," Picard interjected. "Or the capacity for beings to choose differently than predicted. You're asking me to participate in murder based on a future that hasn't happened yet. I refuse." Pike's eyes hardened. "Then you've chosen. Section, execute Protocol Omega." The USS section vanished from its position inside the Enterprise's shields, reappearing 50 kilometers distant. Its weapons arrays glowed with building power, not disruptors or photon torpedoes, but something worse. Temporal displacement beams designed to erase targets from the timeline itself. "Captain, they're preparing to fire." Worf's hands flew across tactical. "If those weapons hit us, they'll create a chronometric shockwave that will erase this moment from history." Data finished. The Enterprise, the X-Men, everyone, retroactively deleted from the timeline. We will never have existed. Cyclops grabbed Picard's shoulder. "Captain, let me help." My optic blasts could disrupt their targeting systems if you can drop shields for 3 seconds. And expose us to their weapons? Trust us, Jean said, her voice carrying absolute conviction. We've fought to protect our world our entire lives. Let us protect yours. Picard locked eyes with Xavier, searching for deception, finding only desperate sincerity. The decision balanced on a razor's edge: trust these powerful strangers with his crew's lives, or face temporal annihilation trying to fight alone. Mr. Worf, drop forward shields. 3-second window. Mr. Summers, make it count. Cyclops stepped to the view screen, his hands adjusting his visor to maximum intensity. Computer, calculate firing trajectory to the section's port weapons array. Compensate for stellar drift and relative velocity. Trajectory calculated, the computer replied. Shields down. Worf announced. Cyclops triggered his visor. The optic blast that erupted wasn't the controlled burst he'd used on the bridge intruders, it was a focused beam of pure concussive force, ruby-red energy that crossed 50 kilometers of space in an eye blink and struck the section's port side like a physical ram. The temporal displacement beam meant for the Enterprise flickered and died, its emitters overloaded by the impact. The section's hull buckled, atmosphere venting from emergency decompression. Shields up. Picard commanded. Status of the section. Severe damage to weapon systems and structural integrity, data reported. They are no longer capable of firing their temporal weapons. However, Captain Pike is initiating self-destruct. He intends to create a temporal paradox that will. Xavier's eyes widened in horror. He's going to erase himself from the timeline. If a time traveler dies in the past, the causality loop collapses. Everything he changed, including coming back to stop us, will be undone. But the backlash could create temporal fractures across this entire sector. Can we stop him? Riker demanded. Not from here, Jean said. But if someone could get aboard that ship, disrupt the self-destruct sequence before it cascades. Wolverine appeared in the turbolift, blood and sedative darts still clinging to his uniform. I heal from anything. Temporal paradoxes ain't gonna be worse than what I've already survived. Get me over there, and I'll shut it down. The transporter can't penetrate their shields, Geordi's voice crackled over the comm, but if you drop me right on their hull, I could cut through with my claws and enter through the breach Mr. Summers created. Picard made the call. Transporter room, prepare for emergency beam out. Coordinates, USS section's hull breach. Mr. Logan, you'll have 90 seconds before temporal collapse begins. Can you shut down their self-destruct in that time? Bob, I've stopped Sentinel factories, Magneto's schemes, and alien invasions. A suicide button ain't gonna slow me down. Wolverine's grin was feral. Besides, I got a score to settle with people who think they can play God with other people's lives. The transporter beam caught him mid-stride, and Logan materialized in the cold vacuum of space, his regeneration already compensating for the hostile environment. His claws extended, and he carved through the section's damaged hull like opening a tin can. Inside, emergency lighting painted everything in apocalyptic red. Logan's enhanced senses guided him through corridors filled with unconscious crew members. Pike had sedated his own people to spare them from the temporal collapse. A mercy kill for those who'd followed his vision of necessary evil. The bridge was empty except for Captain Pike, standing at the self-destruct console, his hand hovering over the final authorization command. Don't, Wolverine said, his claws gleaming in the emergency lights. There's always another way. Pike turned, and his expression held infinite sadness. I've seen the future, mutant. I know what you become. What your kind becomes. The wars, the suffering, the collapse of everything the Federation built over centuries. You think you're heroes, but you're the spark that ignites the fire. Maybe, Logan admitted. But maybe that fire was always gonna happen. Maybe the Federation's got cracks in its foundation that'd show up eventually, with or without us. You can't stop change by killing it, Pike. You just drive it underground where it festers and explodes worse later. This isn't about philosophy. It's about mathematics. Probability. The calculated certainty that your presence here will destroy everything. Logan retracted his claws. Then let it. Let the future happen. Let people make their own choices and deal with the consequences. That's what freedom means, the right to screw up and learn from it. You take that away, you're just another dictator in a uniform, telling people what's good for them. Pike's hand trembled over the control. I took an oath to protect the Federation. Then protect it by trusting it, Logan said quietly. Trust that Picard and his people can handle us. Trust that the Federation's ideals are strong enough to survive 7 refugees with weird powers. Or admit that your precious Federation is so fragile that 7 people can shatter it, which means it was broken already. For a long moment, Pike stood frozen. Then his hand fell away from the console. Computer, cancel self-destruct. Authorization Pike Omega 7. Self-destruct cancelled, the computer confirmed. Pike slumped against the console, suddenly looking ancient. I violated the Temporal Prime Directive. Section 31's Charter. Everything I believed was necessary. And for what? To let chaos win because a mutant with claws made a philosophical argument? Nah, Logan said, extending his hand. You stopped because deep down, you know killing us would have made you the monster you were trying to prevent. That's the thing about being human, Pike, or mutant, or whatever. We all got darkness in us. It's the choices we make with it that define us. Pike stared at the offered hand, then slowly grasped it. The Enterprise is hailing us. Captain Picard demands my surrender. Yeah, he's big on that accountability thing. But hey, you get to live with your choices now. That's worth something. As Wolverine escorted Pike back to the Enterprise via transporter, the USS section hung dead in space, a ghost ship from a future that would now never happen, crewed by operatives whose mission had ended in failure. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard faced Captain Pike across the view screen, his expression carved from stone. You attempted to murder refugees, violated the Temporal Prime Directive, and nearly destroyed this ship and sector. You will stand trial for your crimes, Captain. Section 31's shadowy existence does not place you above Federation law. Do what you must, Pike said tiredly. But remember this conversation when the mutant question divides your precious Federation. When worlds go to war over genetic enhancement. When the Borg adapt their abilities and exterminate entire civilizations. Remember that I tried to prevent it, and you stopped me because of ideals you'll soon learn are luxuries the real universe can't afford. The transmission ended. Worf immediately took Pike and his crew into custody, their ship tractored behind the Enterprise as evidence. In the observation lounge, the X-Men gathered with Picard and his senior staff. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion and realization in its wake. You saved this ship, Picard said simply. All of you. Mr. Summers, your precision prevented our destruction. Ms. Gray, your telepathy gave us tactical advantage. Mr. Logan, you stopped a temporal catastrophe. The Federation owes you a debt it can never fully repay. We didn't do it for a debt, Captain, Cyclops replied. We did it because it was right. Because you chose to protect us even when it would have been easier to surrender us. You proved that your Federation's ideals aren't just words. But Pike's warning remains, Xavier said quietly. Our presence here has already caused conflict with the Romulans and Section 31. Other factions will follow. Captain, perhaps the kindest thing we could do is work on returning home immediately, before our existence destabilizes your universe further. Picard considered this, then shook his head. Professor, the Federation was built on a radical idea, that beings of different species, cultures, and capabilities could coexist peacefully if they chose to. Every generation faces tests of that ideal. You're simply our generation's test. Running from that test would betray everything we claim to believe. Besides, Riker added with a slight smile, if the Borg are going to adapt mutant abilities in some dark future, I'd rather have the real X-Men on our side when it happens. At least you come with consciences. Beast cleared his throat. Speaking of returning home, Commander Data and I have made significant progress on understanding the subspace rupture dynamics. We believe we can replicate the dimensional variance within 72 hours. However, the energy requirements are substantial, we'll need to route power from the warp core, and the Enterprise will be vulnerable during the attempt. Vulnerable to whom? Storm asked. Data's answer was simple and chilling. To anyone monitoring our activities who wishes to prevent your departure. Or to capture you for themselves. The implication hung heavy in the air. The X-Men weren't just refugees anymore. They were prizes in a cosmic game of power, their abilities representing advantages that could shift the balance between empires. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, eyes that had watched the Enterprise's confrontation with Section 31 now calculated new strategies. The Romulan Empire had failed to acquire the mutants through force. Section 31 had failed to eliminate them through temporal manipulation. But there were other powers in the galaxy. Powers older, stranger, and infinitely more patient than either Romulans or rogue Starfleet operatives. The Borg had taken notice. And the collective was very interested in the concept of genetic distinctiveness that granted such extraordinary capabilities. The Enterprise hung in orbit around Theta Cygni 7, a barren Class D planetoid whose electromagnetic properties made it ideal for the complex calculations required to reopen a dimensional rift. Data and Beast had transformed Cargo Bay 2 into a makeshift interdimensional laboratory, their combined genius creating equations that stretched across holographic displays like mathematical poetry. Fascinating, Beast murmured, his clawed fingers dancing across a PADD. Your positronic brain processes quantum variables at speeds my organic neural pathways simply cannot match. Yet my intuitive grasp of multidimensional physics complements your computational precision perfectly. We're like jazz and classical music, individually brilliant, together transcendent. An appointment metaphor, Dr. McCoy. Data tilted his head in that distinctly android way. Though I confess I still do not fully understand the appeal of jazz. The improvisation seems inefficient compared to composed structure. Ah, but that's the beauty of it, my friend. Life itself is improvisation, unexpected variables creating harmonies we could never predict through pure calculation. Beast gestured to the dimensional equations. Much like our current predicament. By all logical analysis, we shouldn't be able to return my team home. The energy requirements alone should be prohibitive. Yet here we are, finding creative solutions because we refuse to accept the mathematically probable limitations. In the corridor outside, Jean Grey walked beside Counselor Troy, their conversation a mixture of spoken words and gentle telepathic impressions, a communication style unique to two empaths finding common language. The crew's fear is diminishing, Troy observed. 3 days ago, half the ship was terrified you'd read their deepest secrets or manipulate their thoughts. Now they see you in 10 forward, ordering synthahol like anyone else, and they realize you're just people. People who could rewrite their personalities with a thought, Jean replied softly. Let's not pretend the fear is baseless. I have to actively maintain barriers every moment to avoid accidentally absorbing surface thoughts. In crowds, it's like standing in a hurricane of voices, all screaming their private anxieties and desires. The only thing protecting this crew from my intrusion is my choice to respect their mental privacy. Yet you make that choice consistently. That's what matters. Jean stopped at a viewport, staring at the stars. In our universe, there's a force called the Phoenix. A cosmic entity of creation and destruction that's touched my mind before. Sometimes I feel it calling across dimensional barriers, even here. This burning presence that promises I could be so much more than human, more than mutant, something godlike and terrible. The professor says control comes from accepting our limitations. But what if our limitations are prisons we build to comfort people who fear what we might become? Troy felt the dangerous current beneath Jean's words, not immediate threat, but philosophical vertigo. The question that haunted every powerful being: what right did others have to demand restraint from someone who could reshape reality? The Federation believes that rights come with responsibilities, Troy said carefully. Your power to touch minds comes with the responsibility to respect them. Not because you're forced to, but because respecting others is what separates civilization from chaos. And when civilization demands you cripple yourself for its comfort. When respecting others means never fully using gifts you were born with. Jean's green eyes held genuine anguish. I'm not arguing for control or domination. I just wonder sometimes if the people who fear us most are the ones who'd abuse such power themselves, so they assume we will too. Before Troy could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Unidentified vessels approaching. The two telepaths exchanged glances and ran for the nearest turbolift. On the bridge, Picard stood rigid as tactical displays showed the impossible. 9 vessels had dropped out of warp simultaneously, surrounding the Enterprise in a perfect geometric formation. Their design was unlike anything in Federation records: cubic, dark green, their hulls covered in technological protrusions that pulsed with alien energy. Borg, Worf said, his voice tight with primal fear. 9 cubes. Captain, we must retreat immediately. Belay that. Picard's voice carried the weight of nightmares remembered. He'd been assimilated once, become Locutus of Borg, and spent years recovering from the violation of having his individuality stripped away. If we run, they'll pursue. And we can't outrun 9 cubes. His eyes found Xavier, who'd arrived on the bridge with Cyclops. Professor, can you sense them? Xavier's mental probe reached toward the cubes and recoiled violently, his face going ashen. Billions of minds. All connected, all screaming in perfect unison. But beneath the collective voice, I sense fragments, individuals trapped inside the hive, aware but helpless. He struggled for words. It's the most obscene violation of consciousness I've ever encountered. The view screen activated without hail or warning. A Borg drone appeared, humanoid but grotesquely modified with machinery, its face half covered by technological implants, one eye replaced by a glowing red laser. When it spoke, the voice was a chorus of thousands speaking as one. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the. We are aware of your designation. We are aware of the 7 humanoids from parallel dimension. Their genetic distinctiveness is of significant interest to the collective. They will be assimilated first. The Enterprise will be assimilated second. Compliance is mandatory. The transmission ended. The 9 cubes began advancing, their tractor beams reaching out like mechanical tentacles. Evasive maneuvers. Picard commanded. Target the lead cube, full spread of photon torpedoes. The Enterprise dove and rolled, her torpedoes streaking across space to impact the nearest cube's hull. Explosions blossomed across alien architecture, then regenerated in seconds, the Borg adapting their shields to the Enterprise's weapon frequencies. Belay that. Picard's voice carried the weight of nightmares remembered. He'd been assimilated once, become Locutus of Borg, and spent years recovering from the violation of having his individuality stripped away. If we run, they'll pursue. And we can't outrun 9 cubes. His eyes found Xavier, who'd arrived on the bridge with Cyclops. Professor, can you sense them? Xavier's mental probe reached toward the cubes and recoiled violently, his face going ashen. Billions of minds. All connected, all screaming in perfect unison. But beneath the collective voice, I sense fragments, individuals trapped inside the hive, aware but helpless. He struggled for words. It's the most obscene violation of consciousness I've ever encountered. The view screen activated without hail or warning. A Borg drone appeared, humanoid but grotesquely modified with machinery, its face half covered by technological implants, one eye replaced by a glowing red laser. When it spoke, the voice was a chorus of thousands speaking as one. "We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the. We are aware of your designation. We are aware of the 7 humanoids from parallel dimension. Their genetic distinctiveness is of significant interest to the collective. They will be assimilated first. The Enterprise will be assimilated second. Compliance is mandatory." The transmission ended. The 9 cubes began advancing, their tractor beams reaching out like mechanical tentacles. "Evasive maneuvers," Picard commanded. "Target the lead cube, full spread of photon torpedoes." The Enterprise dove and rolled, her torpedoes streaking across space to impact the nearest cube's hull. Explosions blossomed across alien architecture, then regenerated in seconds, the Borg adapting their shields to the Enterprise's weapon frequencies. "Direct hit, minimal damage," Worf reported grimly. "They've adapted. Our weapons are now ineffective." Storm appeared on the bridge via turbolift, her eyes blazing white with contained power. "Captain, the Borg want us. Then let's show them what happens when they hunt mutants." "Ororo, no." Xavier's mental voice carried desperate warning. "If they assimilate you, they'll gain your abilities. Weather control integrated into the collective consciousness, they could devastate entire planets." "Then we don't let them assimilate us," Cyclops said, his hand on his visor. "We've fought Sentinels designed specifically to counter mutant abilities. The Borg are just another machine threat." "Captain, permission to engage?" Picard hesitated. Allowing civilians to fight violated every Starfleet protocol. But these weren't ordinary civilians, and this wasn't an ordinary threat. "Granted. But understand, if they begin assimilating any of you, I'll transport you directly into space. Better death than what the Borg do to their victims." "Agreed," Cyclops said simply. The first cube fired cutting beams, slicing into the Enterprise's shields. Alarm klaxons shrieked as power conduits overloaded across multiple decks. Wolverine materialized on the bridge from the transporter, his uniform still scorched from engineering. "Geordi says we got maybe 10 minutes of shield integrity left. Then they start boarding. I say we board them first." "Board a Borg cube?" Riker's expression showed exactly how insane that idea was. "That's suicide." "For you, maybe." Wolverine's claws extended. "But I heal from anything, and I got a particular talent for wrecking technology from the inside. Get me and a few others into that cube's central plexus, and we can disrupt their coordination long enough for you to blow it to hell." Data's fingers flew across his console. "The plan has merit. Borg cubes rely on distributed processing. Damage to the central plexus would cascade throughout the vessel's systems. However, reaching it would require penetrating approximately 700 meters of hostile ship interior populated by thousands of drones. Then let's narrow those odds." Jean Grey stepped forward, her eyes glowing with telekinetic fire. "I can shield a small team from Borg attacks long enough to reach the center. And Professor Xavier can disrupt the drone's collective consciousness, force them to experience individuality again, if only for moments." Xavier's expression was conflicted. "Jean, forcing individuality back into drones would be extraordinarily painful for them. Many have been assimilated for decades. The psychological trauma would still be better than remaining enslaved," Jean finished. "Professor, I know it violates your ethics. But sometimes there are only terrible choices and slightly less terrible ones." The Enterprise shuddered as another cutting beam carved through hull plating. Engineering reported casualties. Sickbay was filling with wounded. Picard made the calculation. "Assemble your team, Mr. Logan. I'm authorizing a tactical boarding operation. You'll have whatever support we can provide." But the moment I detect assimilation nanoprobes in any of your biosignatures, I'm beaming you back and ejecting you from the ship. I won't let the Borg gain your abilities. Fair enough, Captain. Wolverine's grin was feral. Storm, Psyche, Genie, you're with me. Beast, you stay here and keep working on that dimensional doorway. Rogue, you're backup in case things go really sideways. I am always backup, Rogue muttered, but her hands glowed with absorbed energy, ready. In the transporter room, the strike team assembled. Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, and surprisingly, Lieutenant Worf, who'd volunteered without hesitation. I have faced the Borg before, the Klingon said grimly, his bat'leth strapped to his back. I will not let them take this ship or its guests without a fight. Today is a good day to die. How about we try for it being a good day to win instead? Wolverine suggested. The transporter chief looked nervously at the coordinates. Sir, I'm beaming you directly into a Borg cube's maintenance corridor. The environment will be hostile, temperature extremes, radiation, and approximately 300 drones between you and the central plexus. Sounds like a Tuesday, Cyclops said, adjusting his visor. Energize. The transporter beam caught them mid-breath. Reality dissolved into shimmering light and reformed into mechanical nightmare. The Borg cube's interior was a cathedral of horror, endless corridors of dark metal and pulsing green light, the air thick with the sound of machinery and the collective whisper of billions of assimilated minds. Drones moved with insectal precision, ignoring the materialized intruders for exactly 1.3 seconds before their programming recognized the threat. Intruders detected. Defense protocols initiated. You will be assimilated. 50 drones converged from surrounding corridors, their mechanical limbs extending with injection tubules designed to pump victims full of assimilation nanoprobes. Cyclops fired first. His optic blast carved through the lead drones, the concussive force sending their bodies crashing into bulkheads. But more came, their adaptive shields already adjusting to his attack frequency. Storm raised her hands, and localized electrical fields erupted through the cube's corridors. Lightning arced between drones, overloading their systems. But the Borg adapted faster than any sentinel. Within seconds, their shields compensated, grounding the electrical attacks. They're learning too quickly. Storm shouted over the chaos. Then we don't give them time to learn. Wolverine lunged forward, his adamantium claws shearing through Borg shields like they didn't exist. Metal that could withstand phaser fire offered no resistance to molecular bonded alloy moving with superhuman strength. Drones fell, their bodies cleaved open, wires and organic tissue spilling across deck plates. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more appeared. The Borg were endless, relentless, adapting with every attack. Jean Grey's telekinesis created a moving sphere of protection around the team, deflecting injection tubules and crushing drones against walls. But the mental strain showed in her face, sweat beading on her forehead, veins standing out on her temples. I can feel them, she broadcast telepathically. All those minds trapped inside the collective. Some of them are screaming. Some of them are begging for death. And some have forgotten they were ever individuals. Those are the worst. Can you reach the central plexus from here? Worf demanded, his bat'leth cleaving through a drone's torso. Not through all this psychic noise. We need to get closer. They fought deeper into the cube, leaving a trail of destroyed drones behind them. But Wolverine's regeneration was slowing, his body overwhelmed by repeated injuries faster than even his healing factor could compensate. Cyclops's continuous optic blasts were causing severe eye strain. Storm's electromagnetic manipulation was draining her reserves. And Jean's telekinetic shield flickered with each step. 70 meters to central plexus, Worf reported, consulting his tricorder between sword strikes. At current pace, we'll reach it in 4 minutes, if we survive. Then Xavier's mental voice touched all of them simultaneously, broadcasting from the Enterprise. I'm going to try something. Brace yourselves. The professor's telepathy exploded through the cube like a psychic shockwave. It touched every drone within range, not to control them, but to remind them. To force them to remember what they'd been before assimilation. Names. Faces. Loves and losses. The million small moments that make an individual real. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. Drones stopped mid-attack, their bodies convulsing as fragmentary personalities reasserted themselves against the collective's will. Some screamed. Some wept. Some simply stood frozen, caught between two states of being, individuals remembering slavery, slaves remembering freedom. Go. Xavier's mental voice was strained to breaking. I can hold this for 30 seconds. Reach the plexus. End this. The team ran. Through corridors of momentarily paralyzed drones, past chambers where assimilation tables stood empty and waiting, deeper into the geometric heart of alien horror. The central plexus was a massive chamber dominated by a structure like a technological brain, millions of interconnected nodes pulsing with data streams, the coordination center for the entire cube's hive mind. There. Cyclops pointed. That central column. Destroy it, and the whole cube's processing network crashes. Wolverine's claws struck the structure. Adamantium bit into alien alloy, but the plexus was reinforced beyond anything he could cut through quickly enough. Out of the way. Storm gathered every remaining reserve of power, channeling electromagnetic force into a focused electromagnetic pulse. The EMP exploded through the chamber, overloading circuits, scrambling data connections. The cube shuddered. Drones throughout the vessel stopped moving, their collective consciousness fragmenting. And in that moment of Borg vulnerability, the Enterprise fired. Every remaining photon torpedo, every phaser array, concentrated on the wounded cube's power matrix. The explosion was visible from light years away, a miniature star being born and dying in seconds as the cube's antimatter containment failed catastrophically. The transporter caught the strike team milliseconds before the shockwave hit, yanking them back to the Enterprise in a shimmer of emergency beamout. They materialized on the transporter pad bruised, bleeding, and triumphant. One cube destroyed, Wolverine said, his healing factor already closing wounds. 8 to go. But the remaining 8 cubes didn't attack. Instead, they held position, their collective consciousness recalculating. The strike team's success had demonstrated something the Borg had not anticipated, that the mutants' abilities could overcome even adaptive technology when combined with tactical creativity. The Borg transmitted again. Species designation, mutant. Biological distinctiveness, significant. Threat assessment, substantial. New priority, containment and study before assimilation. Compliance will be obtained through alternative methodology. The cubes activated tractor beams, not on the Enterprise, but on the planetoid below. Theta Cygni 7 groaned as gravitational forces tore at its crust. Within minutes, the electromagnetic field's data and beast needed for the dimensional rift would be disrupted beyond use. They're destroying our way home, Beast reported from Cargo Bay 2, horror in his voice. If those cubes destabilize the planet's magnetic field, we'll never generate the energy cascade needed to reopen the dimensional barrier. Picard's jaw tightened. They're not trying to assimilate you anymore. They're trying to trap you here. If you can't go home, they have all the time in the universe to study, adapt, and eventually capture you. Xavier's telepathy touched the collective's vast consciousness one more time, and what he sensed chilled him to the core. The Borg weren't angry or vengeful. They were simply patient. Immortal machine consciousness calculating that eventually, the mutants would make a mistake. Eventually, exhaustion or desperation would create an opening. They're playing a long game, Xavier said quietly. And they're very, very good at it. Storm looked at the view screen, at the 8 cubes methodically destroying the only method of returning home, and her eyes blazed white with barely contained fury. Then we need to change the rules of the game, she said. Before the Borg decide that studying us means destroying everything we care about in this universe too,